Alright guys, today I want to go over this article from TCGPlayer, the biggest price spikes in Pokemon this week. This was posted on January 7th. I really love this article that they do on a weekly basis. It just kind of helps you keep your pulse on the Pokemon market. Obviously, nobody can look everywhere, so they just give you an idea of some of the cards that they have noticed have been having some pretty volatile price spikes, over whatever week or whatever time frame that they're talking about. So first up on their list, they have this Gengar and Mimikyu GX Team Up Ultra Rare, tag team card. Very cool card. Obviously Gengar, insanely hot Pokemon, super popular, one of the big names of the franchise. Mimikyu, also a pretty cool, pretty popular Pokemon. Pairing them up together, some interesting artwork. These tag team up cards are just money. This is really cool. And you can see here over the past month, this one, in the middle of December, we were looking at about $1,100. It's now climbed up to about $1,200, so making a nice gain over the course of the past month. But over the past year, this thing has just been a non-stop grower. January of 2025, we're looking at, $500. And like I said, now $1,200. It has more than doubled in the past year. This is a very, very cool card. These older sets, not older sets, but they're kind of like these like mid-term sets now. They're only getting older, they're only getting more rare, and the prices are going to continue to rise and grow as well, especially for these highly desirable cards. So I think this one is a no-brainer. Again, really expensive now, and it's hard to say like, hey, I would love to pick this up at $1,200 now that it's doubled. But it does make me want to go look at, other tag team and team up stuff that may have been a little bit underrated, a little bit slept on. Sometimes people get so caught up in the modern or, like the hyper modern, they miss out on some of that mid-range stuff that I'm sure that this Gengar Mimikyu for $500 $400 a year ago was an absolute steal, when there's cards, hyper modern cards, going for more than that now, when this has had time to age, and the population is probably way lower and stuff like that. So this one had a strong 2025 that it could really go nuclear in 2026. I mean, could it go nuclear from here? Like, it's already $1,200. What's even going nuclear mean for it? I don't know. The team up alternate full art printing of Gengar and Mimikyu GX began at $400, started climbing and never stopped. I truly mean that. Between a year ago and now, there are essentially no pullbacks, and that's what's great too. You want to find cards that have these non-stop graphs. I mean, that just slowly, gradually climb up over time. Those are healthy, sustainable graphs. As we begin 2026, the iconic duo is sitting at the market price of $1,200. That's up another $50 in the past week, and just barely outpaces Phantom Force's Dialga EX as the most expensive card to appear on today's list. So pretty crazy there. Dialga isn't far behind though. Then also we have Sunbreon. This is a card that a lot of people are talking about, and we can see here this one actually down over the past month. It was $1,000 in the middle of December. We're now looking at about $950 over the past 6 months. I don't know. We're back to kind of where we were 6 months ago, I guess, but in between, we went up and touched the $1,200 mark, and a year ago we were sitting at $1,600, which is absolutely insane. So again, this one not quite cut in half over the past 365 days, but pretty damn close. So just like the opposite of the last cards we've seen. And again, that's the difference between some of these hyper modern cards that are still actively being printed. Prismatic stuff is still being printed and put on shelves and stuff like that to this day. So it doesn't really make sense to go out and buy these single cards when people are still going to be unpacking these all the time. Like, yeah, I'm sure this card is super hard to pull. It's obviously super rare. It's super highly sought after. But the supply of this, however slowly it's going up, it's still increasing. And this is one of the time periods where it'll be increasing, as much as ever. Eventually, the amount that it's increasing is going to slow down. It's going to stop. Then the amounts are going to go down because it's going to be harder to find them in good conditions, and people are going to be, losing them or destroying them or whatever, or slabbing them up. Like, the raw copies are eventually going to slow down. But right now, you're at the point where, hey, you want to wait a little bit before you start buying these. Again, imagine having paid $1,600 for this a year ago and now seeing it, sit at $950. That would be disappointing. Now, you'd still own a really, really amazing card. You'd own a great card. You'd own the Umbreon EX from Prismatic Evolutions, the SIR. It's a card that everyone loves, everyone would want to have. But you'd know the truth. You'd be sitting there on a $600 loss or something like that, which is that's a tough one to make back up. So this is the most iconic Pokemon this side of Generation 1, and Umbreon is responsible for some huge hits across years of Pokemon sets. The SIR printing from the recent Prismatic Evolutions modern day Pokemon TCG Goldmine is the latest to join the list. A standout even in a set full of them for the last several months. Umbreon EX 161 was actually one of those stagnant cards cards. Its price slowly dropped from 1,400 release day price all the way down to an all-time market low of 800 on the first day of the year. It's been rebounding since, suggesting that perhaps the drop may be temporary. It's up this week from 880 to 955. So they're actually saying, that this is up a little bit recently. Again, yeah, it did drop down here to about $800 before it spiked back up to about 950. But still, I'm not one that really cares too much about those short-term trends. I like to look at those long-term trends. And when I see this long-term graph, I'm like, hey, this thing might have more room to fall. And I just use common sense that, hey, if Prismatic is still actively being put on shelves right now, that's not when I like to buy. I would rather be late than wrong. I would rather be patient and see where this has to go. Like I said, I'd rather get in a little bit too late than too early and just end up looking silly. Another card, speaking of something just like that, we have the Mega Charizard XEX from Phantasmal Flames SIR. Again, this is a very, very sick card. I love this card. This is a card that I would love to own, but I'm just nowhere near even considering picking this thing up. Again, ever since we've seen this card release, first sales were around 800, 850, 880, whatever. I saw some ridiculous sales for this on like TikTok and YouTube Shorts and stuff like that. But it's just kind of dropped and dropped and dropped. And I know they're going to say, hey, it was at 425 and now it's up to 500, whatever. That's a great bounce back. But this thing's going to have ups and downs and sideways and everything in between. But it's still a card that's going to be getting ripped open in big numbers. Obviously, Phantasmal Flames is still going to be getting printed for a long time forward in the future. Just wait, just be patient, see where this thing goes. I'm sure you'll have plenty more chance in the future to pick this thing up lower than you can today. But here's another very, very cool card. Again, Mewtwo and Mew are super hot right now. A ton of new and exciting Mew cards, a ton of new and exciting Mewtwo cards, a ton of I'm sure new Mew and Mewtwo collectors being created each and every day when you have stuff like Team Rocket's Mewtwo, or you have Bubble Mew or whatever. Here's a card, the Mewtwo and Mew GX from Unified Minds, the secret rare, the rainbow rare tag team card. Again, another tag team card. These are very, very cool cards, especially when you can have two iconic Pokemon on them for the price of one. And again, an old card, or an older card than some of this hyper, older than this, a card that's had more time to appreciate. And look at this unstoppable graph. And again, you could pick up something like this for $373, or you could pick up something like this for, $500. I don't know. I would probably rather have this for $373 than this for $500 right now, or this for like $1,000 right now. I don't know. Like, to me, this has, I think this is going to outperform those cards over the next year. And again, in the past year, this thing has almost doubled in price, but it's still honestly at a pretty reasonable price point, again, especially for two such iconic Pokemon. So I don't know. Again, I'm not even the biggest fan of the rainbow rare cards. I do have a rainbow rare card that I have sitting on my desk always, this Gyarados card, just because I think it's a cool little card that I was able to pick up for like a somewhat reasonable price. But I'm not the biggest, personal fan of those rainbow cards ever, but I do understand, the market dynamics of these older, middle-aged kind of cards, and how we're at that upward slope of their trajectory rather than at the downward slope of the trajectory of some of these new hyper modern single cards. So that's kind of my big takeaway from this video. My big advice is look for stuff that is out of the printing cycle. Look at the stuff that's had some time to mature. Look at some stuff that's on the upward trajectory of its growth cycle, and those are the places you want to be buying into and kind of riding that wave and riding that momentum, rather than speculating about stuff that, is going to be wildly volatile and probably just end up moving against you anyway. Here's a pretty cool card, the Venusaur Wizard Black Star promo. And we can see here in the past year, this thing in January was about $106. It's now up to $170. If you're a Pokemon history buff, you already know this. In the game's earliest days, the cards were designed and printed by Wizard of the Coast, the same studio that was finding success with the then fledgling Magic the Gathering. Wizards only carried the Pokemon contract for a few years, but that time brought some very rare promo cards that hold up today. Like this promo Venusaur, for instance, it was available only as a tie-in with the Nintendo Player's Guide for the Game Boy release Pokemon trading card game, where yes, you played as a character gathering cards for the Pokemon TCG and battling against other trainers doing the same. Honestly, it was an amazing game, says the author here. The PvE was extraordinarily good and replayable, especially given the constraints of the time, and I probably played more of that game than my original Pokemon Blue. That's crazy. I own a copy of this promo Venusaur myself still, although it's buried deep in a forgotten box in the basement I'll dig up someday, and perhaps someday too, because this promo Venusaur leaped in price this week, up from a market price of $149 to $170 at the end of the first week of 2026. So pretty cool story there. Again, old iconic promo cards, rare, whatever. It's got good fundamentals. It's not totally shocking to me. Maybe some of these price jumps are pretty shocking, and maybe not like supernatural growth, but not that crazy either. And then getting into one of this card, when I saw this on the list, it just gave me so much nostalgia. I knew exactly what this was. This is an Entei card that was a promo for one of the Pokemon movies. I think I looked it up. It's like Pokemon 3, the movie or something like that. I think this came out when I was like 4 or 5 years old. I definitely had this card. I definitely went and saw this movie in theaters, maybe multiple times, maybe got multiple of these promo cards, whatever. But this card has been spiking up. Again, in January of 2025, $7 for the reverse foil, and now it's up to $57. Absolutely insane year. That's probably an unsustainable growth rate. That's, growth that doesn't even make sense. But it spiked this week because of a buyout with 40 copies selling to one buyer on December 28th and again on January 3rd. The cumulative results at the market price on Entei jumped from $27 up to $66, with near mint copies still starting around that price point. Another promo gaining this week is the Cerulege. I can never pronounce that one. That's hard for me to say. Cerulege. A promo from Mega Evolution that simply did not have enough listings to keep up with demand. We've seen relatively scarcer items like staff or pre-release or Pokemon Center printings eat up a lot of price increases over the last couple of months, and this week that same pressure sent the pre-release printing of Cerulege up from $14 to $24, and the Tinkaton pre-release staff promo outpaced them all, jumping from $80 to $108 over the last week. Finally, Sabrina's Gengar from Gym Heroes, the holo rare here. This thing a year ago was in the unlimited holo foil, was about $160. Now it's up to $307. Again, you can see here a lot of the good stuff has almost doubled in the past year, a little bit more, a little bit less, whatever. So let's end with one of those Wizard of the Coast sets, in this case Gym Heroes. This set features Sabrina's Gengar, which has been a chase card from the set going back to the day it was released. Of course, it was a very long time ago since that set released, and the clean copies of cards can be notoriously hard to find from that era. So while I'll say that a recent sale pushed Sabrina's Gengar's official market price up over $300, the reality of live listings is that near mint copies should actually be considered closer to $400, with a ton of range based on condition. As someone who played the heck out of his Gym Heroes back then, I can tell you that we did not use sleeves, and we did play on the playground. If you can still find a good looking copy of Sabrina's Gengar, it won't be long before the market price numbers catch up to that live listing. And again, that's another thing, especially when you are, comparing hyper modern, where most of that stuff is pack fresh, most of that stuff is in, mint or near mint condition. You're talking the difference between PSA 9s or 10s or whatever, and then you start looking at some of these mid-tier cards or even older tier cards where it's hard to find them, let alone find them in good condition. Like that, again, that scarcity, that rarity, but still that genuine demand. If you're finding good cards, good looking cards for the right Pokemon, that's going to help you, really drive those gains over time, rather than just chasing, whatever the flavor of the month card in the modern world is. So that's definitely something I think you need to keep in mind. Like, is this the most beautiful card in the world? No, not necessarily. But again, if you had it at $160 at the beginning of 2025, and now they're saying, hey, market price, you can probably get realistically $400 for it, you're making money, you're doing something right. But that is pretty much it for this video today, guys. Hopefully catch you in the next one. Until then, peace.